Alright, got a sandstone fake rock wall project here. Trying to get the look of wind-swept sandstone, sort of red rock, southwest United States look. Made this for a 10-gallon aquarium, but of course you could just take these concepts and scale it up to a much larger cage. But so had another rock wall a few years ago and decided to do another one. You want to wear a dust mask when you do this. I'm near a open window because I'm working with some hot wires from the hot wire foam factory. So I've got a straight knife and sort of a flexible hot wire that I'm going to be using some polystyrene, basically insulation. Got a thin sheet here. Going to measure out the back, and I'm going to measure this out, cut this out so that it's a little bit too small. You definitely want to err on the side of it being too small than being too big, because you can always add to it to make it bigger. But the main point is you want to be able to fit this back into the cage. So I've got this just a little bit too small, fit this back in here. As you can see, I'm able to move it around up and down, side to side a little bit. So taking the flexible hot wire and bending it into some, interesting shapes there to try to get some interesting texture. But you can also use it in, that was almost like a perfectly straight line form there, and still with working it back and forth, be able to achieve quite a bit of texture there. So that's kind of what I'm going for. If you do a search on the internet, got it shaped in a half moon there and working with a much larger piece of polystyrene. But if you do a search on like morgue file for sandstone, you'll see the texture is similar to this, where it's got this essentially banding that with wind and sand it'll carve into the rock. So cutting out what will be the hide. So and I'm gonna position this just slightly left. I'm not going to go all the way over to the left or the right, primarily because I want to be able to fit it back into the cage. I've got a top loading tank, so if you've got a front loading tank, it'd be a little bit different, but and it's kind of got the shape of like the base of a cone at this point. Using an adhesive called Loctite's Power Grab, and you really don't need to use much of this, but gluing this section together. And the website's got a facts page which has a list of the materials that I use. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this onto that back part, and then just sort of build from here with other pieces that I'm going to try to mimic into that sandstone look. Fit it back into the cage. You want to periodically do this where you make sure it's going to still fit. Here's one of those pieces where I've got the texture going. I'm just going to carve away at it just to try to make sort of a sloping look, all the while kind of pulling and pushing on that wire to create that textured look. So using the hot wire that's flexible, getting a curved shape. And I've built up some of the structure, and I'm going to fill in the gaps with smaller pieces. Actually, the smaller pieces are what ended up giving it quite a bit of extra detail, is those smaller looking rocks. So traced around the top of that so I can get the shape that I need. And I've got a little outline of what should be the top of that cone-like shape to that one section of rock. So I've got all these pieces on there, they're not glued on, just in case I want to, mix and match and put one section over onto another and see if it works better. Carving out that triangular piece to make it, I guess, look similar to the others in that they're curved. And doing some beveling at the top of that bigger section. And what I usually do before I glue anything together is, like I said before, try to make sure that it's going to look right, and putting with a black magic marker some marks on pieces that are fitting together, so I know exactly how far right, how up and down, does this piece even go with this one? So those black marks can act as a guide to put the thing back together. And usually what I do is also hold some of these pieces before the gluing in with small nails. Not really necessary, but like this is completely held together with nails, so I haven't glued anything yet. Again, trying to see if it's got any issues with like the edges still being able to fit. And I've got smaller pieces that are filling in the gaps. And again, that really provides extra detail in those larger pieces. Going to go ahead and glue everything onto that back section. So gluing onto that little area that's going to be the hide. And to cover all this, I'm going to use a product called Foam Coat. It is from the Hot Wire Foam Factory. Plus, I'm also going to incorporate a product called Bounce that's also from Hot Wire Foam Factory. Bounce will do, just what it says. It's supposed to act as a sort of an impact resistant agent. So I'm going to mix together 3 parts powder with 1 part water and some of the Bounce. And I always end up using a little bit more water than what the instructions say, just to mimic the consistency that I usually end up using. I have used grout in the past, but Foam Coat does seem to be a lot, I guess it's designed for polystyrene, so it doesn't crack as much. It's a little bit more flexible. And you want to put at least 2 coats of this on, especially if you've got a stronger lizard, a heavier lizard like a bearded dragon. You're creating this, hopefully you're not putting a bearded dragon in a 10-gallon cage. But if you're scaling this up and if it's for a dragon, you really want to probably apply 3 coats. So there it's all covered. And it is on to the painting stage. I'm going to mix together a little bit of red, a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow, and I've got just a little bit of black and a fair amount of white in there, and that's really to add gray, and that's to mute the color. So any red rock, structure, rock formation that you see in the Southwest is really never a bright orange or red, like a true red or orange. It's always a little bit muted. So I'm going to cover the entire structure with this mixture of this sort of burnt orange, and then essentially wind up covering up most of it with additional layers of color. So there it is, all covered up with that burnt orange. So really, you could stop right here and people with the shape would probably understand what it was supposed to be, but what I ended up doing is creating all these stripes, and it's really supposed to mimic the color banding that happens with certain forms of sandstone, where you get a little bit of red, a little bit of orange. You know, there's beige in there, just a little bit of bright orange, a little bit of yellow. And this is quite the time-consuming process doing these stripes, really. So if I had to do this over again, I might just do this in like 4 wider color bands and try to blend the bands together instead of doing this sort of really strict striping using some beige sand color. So I'm going to mix in a little bit of this with the orange using a very dark red, so almost black, just to try to I guess convey a crack in the rock. So putting little details like this in there, like fake rock cracks, can really give the project some depth. And especially in between like those little sections where those little formations of rock where it is supposed to be a crack in the rock. So going through again the more, I guess, thinner banding of the colors, and just going off reference photos from morgue file, but you can really get into some interesting detail that looks a little bit better far away than it does close up. You can see you've got sort of a light beige with orange and then red, so I'm not covering everything up. Going in again with the darker color, trying to create fake cracks, again just to give it more depth. And there you have the finished painted piece. So again, it looks a little bit better from a distance than seeing that close up. And now it is time to seal this. I'm going to use a non-toxic acrylic sealer called Shields All. And this is the consistency that it arrives in. I did not water this down. So, and you want to put at least like 4 layers. You want to let this dry overnight and then put another layer on. And it's really more of a water repellent sealant. So if you're creating something like this for like an aquarium, I mean, you know, for fish to go into, whereby it's going to completely be submerged in water, you really want to think about using aquarium grade silicone to cover the entire thing. So there you have it, finished product, putting it back into the cage. So be sure to check out the other fake rock background I did, which is more of a jungle gray rock theme. And thanks for watching.